Competitive Pokemon singles is a completely different world to competitive doubles that is often much harder to balance. Moves that are completely fine in doubles will be absolutely game-breaking in singles. The most well-known and infamous example is Baton Pass. This move sounds unassuming, with its simple effect of switching out a Pokemon while maintaining their stat stage changes and other advantageous effects like Substitute. But this move is entirely banned in most generations of competitive singles, thanks to its ability to create infinite boosting chains that finish with one sweeper who has accumulated every boost in human history. Mechanics like Magic Bounce make these chains near impossible to stop. Evasion boosting and the one-hit KO moves are also much more powerful in competitive singles and are universally banned from being used too. The move Assist has also shown itself to have game-breaking possibilities, allowing you to infinitely roar your opponent if you have Prankster, bypassing the negative priority on the move. Assist can also allow you to become invulnerable with the Assist plus Dive and Lagging Tail combo. In the case of Assist, Game Freak was sick of it too, and they didn't just ban it, they deleted it from the game completely. It's kind of unbelievable how much impact a single move can have on competitive, in some cases warping the entire universe around itself. Amazingly, there are even more examples of banned or earth-shattering moves in competitive Pokemon that you may never have even been aware of. Let's take a look at some of the most game-breaking moves in Pokemon history. Did you know that in Generation 1 specifically, the moves Fly and Dig are banned from being used in competitive? It's a bit bizarre looking. These aren't even good attacks. They have the charge effect where you fly up on the first turn, invulnerable temporarily, then you strike the next turn, so it completely telegraphs what you're about to do and the enemy can easily respond. These kinds of two-turn moves are usually not very good, but why would they be banned? Seems strange. Well, in Generation 1 specifically, there is a glitch involving these moves. If your Pokemon is paralyzed and they use these moves, if they happen to be full paralyzed on the turn that they were supposed to fly back down or emerge from the ground, in the case of Dig, they won't attack you. Instead, they will stay in the invulnerable state and just be invincible forever. You can't hit them ever again, unless they switch out or they choose to use Fly or Dig again. So this could obviously be abused. You just fish for a full paralysis while flying, and you've earned a win instantly. What a concept. You could just keep using other moves like Body Slam or Earthquake while invulnerable to all incoming damage. The only moves in Gen 1 that can hit you while in this invulnerable state from Fly or Dig is the move Swift can hit you and the move Bide. And both of these moves are terrible. I've never seen them in my life in Gen 1 competitive. Especially Bide, which requires you to charge for even longer to actually deal damage. I mean, Generation 1 is full of mechanics like this that can break the game completely, and this is of course a perfectly reasonable move ban. In a competitive gen full of so much variance already, it would not be fun to simply lose on the spot to a Pokemon flying forever or remaining underground indefinitely. And not much of value is lost by banning these moves either. They're not really used for their intended purpose ever, so I think that that makes sense. Shed Tail is a move that was introduced in Generation 9, and if some of you played competitive singles in the earlier days of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I'm sure you remember this one. Shed Tail is an insane move that created some of the most ridiculous hyper-offense strategies I think I've ever seen in my life. This is a move with a heavy cost associated. You have to subtract 50% of your HP bar to be able to use it, but the cost is well worth it. Upon using Shed Tail and subtracting that HP, you will create a substitute and then pass the substitute onto a teammate, effectively giving them a completely free entry point. Pivoting is a powerful concept in competitive Pokemon, of course, but pivoting with the security of a substitute in front of you is even better. And if you think about the fact that the move Substitute already requires 1/4 of your HP to be able to use, I mean, that makes the HP cost of this move feel a little less devastating. Cyclizar was the chief abuser of Shed Tail at first, the all-new Dragon Normal type Pokemon with pretty terrible traits besides Shed Tail. Shed Tail was the real star of the show. It was the main reason to use this. You would even use Choice Scarf Cyclizar with Shed Tail, purely to be able to Shed Tail as quickly as possible, go to a boost sweeper and start defeating everything. Cyclizar also has the ability Regenerator, which is kind of perfect here, isn't it? Upon switching out, you restore 1/3 of your HP. That's most of the damage that you just dealt to yourself with Shed Tail, making its cost even less than what it would usually be. and Cyclozar was used alongside powerful boost sweeping threats like Annihilate and Volcarona and Baxcalibur. And at the time, Qian Pao was a very chaotic time for competitive singles where the whole metagame revolved around this. It really did. It was all about shed tail to your boost sweeper, click the buttons, and defeat everything. At first, they weren't sure if shed tail was inherently broken or if it was Cyclozar who was broken, because Cyclozar is the best abuser of shed tail in the game. It has regenerator and it's very fast, and it can repeatedly shed tail multiple times. Maybe if you ban Cyclozar, the problem's solved. So that's what they did at first. Cyclozar was banned, but then a new superstar rose up to take its place, the second best of the shed tail Pokemon, Orthworm Jim. Orthworm Jim came up to say hello, and this guy has shed tail as well. What a concept. Orthworm is a pretty good Pokemon. Its stats are very average except for a massive defense stat, and it has the excellent ability Earth Eater, which grants an immunity to ground and a healing effect if you get hit by a ground move. Pretty fantastic on a steel type. Usually you're weak to ground, now you're getting healed from ground. Very, very nice. Orthworm also happens to have options like Stealth Rock and Body Press at spikes and great utility. So with a Citrus Berry equipped, you could bring yourself down to that half HP, eat the Citrus Berry, allowing you to do another shed tail in the future. And in some cases, Orthworm was even better than Cyclozar because it could shed tail slower than the enemy. Instead of Cyclozar, who shed tails first, acts first because of its high speed, and then goes to an ally who will then take an incoming hit as a result. Orthworm can take the hit for you, then with lower speed shed tail to something who has now got the support of a substitute in front of it and a shield against incoming attacks. Orthworm also provided the incredible support of hazards and it checked things, and also it has this broken pivoting move that enables setup sweepers. So Orthworm was just as much of a problem as Cyclozar was. In some ways it was even better, and so they decided, you know what, shed tail is broken on more than one Pokemon here, and if you ban Orthworm too, guess what? We're going to be living in a Sceptile metagame, because Sceptile also has shed tail. I think that they noticed that the problem was not any one Pokemon, it was the move. This move is too much for singles. It's too much. There's only one Pokemon on the screen. And if you Baton Pass a substitute to a Pokemon, that's two broken moves in one. It's crazy work. It's funny to think that Baton Pass was banned, but this wasn't, which is in some ways an even better version of Baton Pass. So shed tail, a rare move ban in competitive singles, but it had to be done. It had to be done because the whole game was just shed tail to a boost sweeper and click butt. There was no gaming taking place. And unfortunately, folks, for a moment here, I'm going to talk about the forbidden format, Gen 4 OU, because there was once a time where things were even worse than they are at present. I'm sure you're all aware that in Gen 4 OU, the best Pokemon in the game is Jirachi, a Pokemon infamous for its ability to hit 60% flinches with Iron Head, in tandem with Body Slam, which can spread paralysis 60% of the time, of course off the back of Serene Grace, which doubles secondary effect chances. This is a sometimes infuriating Pokemon to go up against. They can tear entire teams apart by just not letting them act ever, flinching them, full paralyzing them, over and over and over. But we can thank the heavens that the move Swagger is banned in Generation 4, and it's actually banned in multiple generations, not just Gen 4, but it's banned in Gen 3 and 5 as well. I think it should be universally banned. I hate this move. This is an absurd move that really takes things out of the player's hands and puts them into God's hands instead. Swagger is a move that applies confusion to the enemy, the stupidest status condition in all of Pokemon, a status condition that causes you to hit yourself 50% of the time instead of what you would usually be doing. On top of that, it also raises the target's attack by 2 upon confusing it. So if you do hit yourself in confusion, you will hit yourself much harder than usual, exacerbating the coin flip. So if you lose the coin flip, you're taking more damage from them because you're giving them attack. If you win the coin flip, they're dealing more damage to themselves. It's just amplifying the RNG even further. But you can see how this would be a problem on Jirachi. You're paralyzing them, and you're iron heading them, and you're confusing them. The chance for your opponent to act is in the negative here. Imagine clicking Iron Head on a Pokemon that has been paralyzed and confused, and there's a 60% chance to flinch. Something is going to cause them to not be able to act. So it's crazy work, but Swagger was not just broken on Jirachi. Mamoswine was able to use Swagger to beat its usual checks. This was dastardly work because Mamoswine would use Swagger against Pokemon that usually beat it, such as Bronzong. You know, Bronzong is immune to ground and resists ice. It should be a hard counter, but you Swagger them and then you substitute over and over. Eventually, they're going to keep hitting themselves so much because of the ramping damage that you're applying to them as you're raising their attack. You just keep swaggering them and eventually they're just going to hit themselves until they perish. And now there are no counters anymore to Mamoswine, as everything else is getting hit by your ice ground moves. or other options, and the Bronzong and Pokemon like Skarmory that are usually solid checks are just hitting themselves in confusion over and over, hoping to get a move through, maybe a Whirlwind if you're lucky from Skarmory. But if they're paralyzed, which it's very easy to do in Gen 4 to spread paralysis, this is just taking control out of their hands. And it was very much an uncompetitive strategy that nobody enjoyed, so the move Swagger ended up getting axed, as there were multiple instances of it being banned. This is a good choice that they made. It's unfortunate that sometimes making changes that are obviously good for the format is just not doable because of bureaucracy and whatever. But in this case, there was enough evidence that Swagger was just ruining the game because multiple Pokemon were abusing it. So they did allow this one through. They let them ban Swagger. And in Generation 5, Swagger could be used on Lipard here with the ability Prankster. So you got a priority boosted Swagger that always goes first most of the time and just has the chance to rob the game from the enemy, especially because they're hitting themselves so much harder from the attack raise. And Swagger could similarly be abused on Pokemon that can set substitutes safely against things, to fish for free turns, power through checks. And it's different from regular Confusion because it will ramp up the amount that they're hitting themselves for, thus powering through what should be a defensive check to things. So it kind of flipped the game on its head and turned things upside down. Rage Fist is another extremely game-breaking move that isn't actually banned, but some people think it should be. Annihilape has access to this move, a signature move on the Primeape line. And this is one of the strongest attacks we have ever seen in the whole series. Rage Fist is a ghost type attack that starts at 50 power, but every time you are hit, the power raises by 50. Ghost is a powerful offensive type that hits a lot of things neutrally, especially with Fighting Stamp to complement it. And even if you only get hit a single time from a U-turn or some other weak hit, that's a 100 power ghost move. That's incredible. But this ramps up, and also when you switch out, the boosts don't go away, they stay. So you could just get Annihilape hit by little stray hits like U-turns or, I don't know, a weak bug type attack from something, and just buff Rage Fist over and over, and it stays at whatever power it gets buffed to, up to a power of 300, which is ridiculous. Annihilape is an extraordinarily bulky Pokemon that, with the help of Bulk Up, a defensive Terra type like Water or Steel or Fairy, and Drain Punch to heal it back up and complement your Ghost Stab perfectly, this was broken. This was absolutely broken. The reason Rage Fist itself wasn't banned is because technically there is another user of Rage Fist, Primeape, the baby form of Annihilape, who is not overpowered because Rage Fist doesn't have stab, it's got way worse stats, it's not as good as abusing it. So unlike Shed Tail or Swagger, which are examples so far, there aren't multiple instances of this breaking a Pokemon to the point of no return. But you could easily see Rage Fist on the right Pokemon being just as game breaking as it was on Annihilape. This is definitely one of the strongest moves we have ever seen, and just think about 300 base power on a move. It's ridiculous. Even if something resists your move, it basically still has 150 power, which is well above average. So resistances effectively don't exist anymore. You're going to one-shot absolutely anything. Unaware can't ignore the damage bonus because it's direct power to the move. It's not a stat boost, a stat stage. It's a direct power buff. It's like stored power times a million. It's just absurd, folks, truly. And finally, a move so broken that it turned Basculin into a game-ending threat. Any Pokemon that gets this move is immediately broken beyond belief. It is the move Last Respect, and this one is banned, unlike Rage Fist. It's quite similar to Rage Fist though. Last Respect has 50 power to begin with, just like Rage Fist. It's a ghost type physical move, and it gains 50 power for each fainted party member. How interesting. And this theoretically has no limit, so you can use Revival Blessing to give yourself more allies that can faint and then increase Last Respects even further. Realistically, this is gonna get boosted a maximum of 5 times and reach a power of 300, much like Rage Fist can. But the difference is that this move gets buffed without any risk to the Pokemon that is using it. So the Pokemon can be saved until the end game, come out of the woodwork, and then select Last Respects until everything perishes. Houndstone was a chief abuser of this in the early days before anything else got the move. It has the ability Sand Rush, which grants double speed in the sand, so Tyrannosif plus this guy together with the sand boost. It doesn't matter if your entire team is deceased because Houndstone comes in and will defeat everything that is not a normal type. Even if they resist, they are getting destroyed. Then Basculegion came along, who was obviously incredibly overpowered with this move. Even better than Houndstone, it had a Swift Swim, which grants double speed in the rain, which can do do the exact same thing alongside Pelipper to create rain. And even Basculin, who's not even a ghost type, is broken with this move for all the same reasons. It simply deals too much damage. Even in Ubers, this move is banned, and you don't often see move bans in Ubers. That's supposed to be the place where you don't ban things. But even up there, this move was so ridiculously game warping that they had to do something about it. Sometimes these kinds of revenge mechanics are difficult to balance. Mechanics that grant you a bonus for something that's usually a disadvantage. Having your Pokemon faint is supposed to be a bad thing, but in this case, Last Respect is so powerful that you want to throw your Pokemon to the birds, throw them into the incinerator as much as possible to buff Last Respects, because it's all that matters. It's so powerful, so broken, that the rest of your team doesn't even matter if you get the Last Respects user in the back to just genuinely one-shot everything they have. So this kind of ruins the whole game. Nothing means anything except for the Last Respect setup, and especially if both players have it in the back and it just comes down to a 50-50 speed tie of who gets to go first, or you have to Terra Normal just to be immune to Last Respects. It's also worth noting that most normal types are terrible in modern Pokemon. Maybe Arceus in Ubers is like the best one ever, but the normal type is not what it once was. It's very scarcely seen, so counterplay to Last Respects is few and far between, folks. As might be the most powerful move in competitive singles history. A move so good that it warped the entire game and made it backwards. You want your Pokemon to die instead of living. Everything's backwards when Last Respect is in play, and we don't want that. Thank you for watching, folks. Which of these broken moves is your favorite? I think I'd say Last Respects, to be honest, even though it being banned is very justified, extremely so. I had a lot of fun with Houndstone Last Respects in the early metagame. That was absolutely absurd, in a similar way to Dracovish Fissus Rend and stuff like that. But what about you? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching as always.